Hi, today's topic is articulation. In singing, articulation can mean several different things. It can mean how we produce each individual pitch, whether that's through abdominal pulses or whether that's actually articulating with the vocal folds. It can also mean how we produce individual clear sounds using the oral cavity, so the mouth area, with our jaw and our tongue and our teeth and our lips. And also using the hard palate and the soft palate and bouncing the tongue off in different points, which creates very different sounds and different consonants. As singers, we often sing in many different languages. And so with articulation, it's developing those skills where we can make each individual sound fit for that language. So we don't have a one-size model for, say, the letter T, which is going to be different in English and different in Spanish or Italian. I do teach a course in International Phonetic Alphabet. We call that IPA, not the beer. And I teach a course over 2 semesters, and we cover 6 different languages. And what it is, it's a series of symbols that correspond with individual sounds in each of those languages. And it's a way to really learn the pronunciation for different languages. I could have an entire video series on that, which would take a very long time to do. So I'm not going to get into that in too much depth in this particular video. But if you're interested in that topic, look for courses in International Phonetic Alphabet. There are different types of consonants, and I'm going to mainly refer to English. However, there's a lot of crossover with this with other languages. The first type of consonant I'm going to refer to is called a stop or a plosive. And that's where there is some type of blocking in the oral cavity. And so I'm just going to turn sideways a little bit so you can see that. So we have p, k, b, d, g, t. So there's some type of blocking, either if it's in the lips or lower down, g. So that is a plosive or a stop. It actually has other names too, but we'll stick with those two. Next is the fricative, and I remember fricative because it begins with the letter F, and F is one of the fricatives. A fricative is where there is continuous friction at the point of articulation. And so what that means is or v, or s, or z. So those are all fricatives. A type of fricative is also called a sibilant, and S and Z are considered sibilants. It's because we have the tongue against the bottom teeth, there's a little groove in the tongue, and it creates a high-pitched sound. So, s, z. So a sibilant is a type of fricative. Next we have what's called an affricative. And an affricative begins with a stop, but then moves into a fricative. So like CH, like in the word chat, we have ch, ch. And so it actually starts with a T, ch, and moves into a fricative. And then we also have j sound, like in the word badge, badge. It's actually a D that moves into a fricative, badge, if you slow that down. The final consonants I'm going to talk about are called the approximant and the semivowel. The approximant is where there's very little obstruction in the oral cavity, like with our letter W in the word weather, or our American R, right. There's really very little obstruction with that. A type of approximant is also called a semivowel, and that's where there's very little obstruction as well, except the tongue is in a higher position very close to the roof of the mouth. And a good example of that would be ya, like in yes. If you isolate that, the tongue's in a high position. You can use different types of consonants as a means to help you with your vocal warm-ups, or if you're having trouble with a certain section of a piece of music, because of the consonant that you have to be singing on, swap out the consonant for a different type and see if that helps you, just as you're practicing to get the sound moving, and then find a way to put the original consonant back in. So if you have an exercise or a consonant that's beginning on an L, for instance, you might want to add a fricative, an F, for instance, to help free that up. or add the F before the L, and sometimes that helps free it up as well. For other students, adding a plosive or stop, like a B or a G, can get the energy moving in the sound as well. So it depends on what the vowel is that you're trying to sing and how you can find more freedom in that. Sometimes in singing, we don't distinguish between our voiced consonants and our unvoiced consonants clearly enough. It takes more energy to sing through a voiced consonant as opposed to an unvoiced consonant. So an example of an unvoiced consonant would be the letter P. P. There's no voice to it, it's just P sound. But it does not have voice. Unlike its equivalent, the letter B, B. So rope, robe. So one has voice and the other doesn't. So I'm going to move through the series of unvoiced versus voiced consonants so you can really hear the difference and know which one pairs with the other. So unvoiced P, its equivalent is the letter B. The letter K, K, no voice, its equivalent is the letter G, G, K, G. Then we have the letter F, F, no voice, and its equivalent is the letter V, V. Then we have the letter S, S, no voice, its equivalent Z, the letter Z. Then we have the letter T, 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 no voice, its equivalent D, the letter D. Then we get into some compound sounds here. So we have a CH, ch, like in much, doesn't have any voice. Its equivalent is going to be J, like judge, J. Then we get into the sound sh, like surely. Its equivalent would be zh, like delusion. Next would be a KS sound, like in the word, so I'll just say the sounds, ks, ks, like in the word lakes. Its equivalent would be a GZ sound, where both of them are voiced, like in the word eggs, eggs. Then we get to TH, and TH can be either be unvoiced or can be voiced. So TH, like in the word thin, or TH voiced, like in the word those. And finally, we have WH versus W. And not everyone knows this, but technically, if you have a word that begins with WH, it should start with an H sound. So, like in the word white, white, it starts with unvoiced, as opposed to the word window, window, window. So that has voice. This student will be demonstrating singing some words that have voiced and unvoiced equivalents.
Close, close, fright, fried, batch, badge.
In the English language, we have what are called diphthongs. These are pairs of vowels that exist in everyday words. And most of the time, we're not even realizing that we're saying more than one vowel. Some of the most common diphthongs are I. So two different vowel sounds. And these are international phonetic symbols that I'm using, which correspond with these sounds. So I. Like in the word wide, wide, wide. The next one would be ow, ow. Like in the word house, house. Two different vowel sounds. The next one is going to be a, like in the word plate, plate, plate. The next one is an open O, which sounds like aw, and then I. So we have I, which, like in the word boy, boy. And then, finally, we have O, like in the word boat, boat, boat. So these are all subtle things about diphthongs, and as when we're speaking the language, we're not as careful about where we put the second part of the diphthong. But when we're singing, it's most important, especially in classical music, that the second vowel in the diphthong goes on at the very, very end. So otherwise we get, if we were singing the word house, we would get house rather than house. And we put it on at the very release of the sound. As I mentioned earlier, the jaw is considered an articulator. However, in singing, we tend to use our jaw more than we need to, and that can really tire us out. So finding those moments where the jaw really doesn't need to be an articulator is very important. This singer is going to demonstrate first the incorrect way of moving between an E sound and an A sound by spreading and using the jaw as the articulator. After that, he's going to go through the difference between those two vowels just using his tongue as the articulator. And then he's going to move through the whole vowel sequence so that you can really see what happens with the tongue and the lips and less with the jaw.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Legato singing is very important, especially in classical music, and that's where we move smoothly from one note to the next rather than bumping each note. By bumping each note, we're actually re-articulating where we shouldn't be. And sometimes that is a result of not enough breath support moving through our vocal folds. So this next student is going to be demonstrating an ascending scale where there are some bumps in the note. And then you can hear the difference afterwards once we've achieved a better legato. Just kind of gliding to the next note. So there's no chance to bump a note.
Okay.
It's almost like a little slide in between each
Okay.
note. That's a nice legato scale. Now let's do that.
Okay.
1, 2, ready, Good, better, good.
I've noticed going, like, it's easier to glide up, but gliding down feels more like I'm still bumping those steps every single.
Yeah, and it's something you can't just suddenly fix.
Gotcha.
But it's just something to be aware of. And just try using a little bit more of your voice now.
Okay.
Don't back off too much. 2, ready, Good, better. Another way the jaw can be incorrectly used as an articulator is by actually moving it for each note. So if we're doing an ascending scale and we're actually articulating with our jaw, that is also usually a result of the breath not moving properly. So with this next singer, you can see that process happening.
Lo, lo.
singing a passage on the same vowel, we have choices of where we can articulate those notes. We can either do low abdominal pulses, we can do throat articulation, so actually articulating with the vocal folds, or we can kind of combine those two ideas and have it meet somewhere more in the middle. By abdominal pulses, we get ah, 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 kind of that type of sound, which can be very helpful. However, if you're singing a really fast passage, sometimes it's really hard to do abdominal pulses. Throat articulating ah, ha, 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 is a way to sing really fast, and it is very appropriate for certain styles of singing, particularly early music. And but then meeting somewhere in the middle is using a bit of both of those ideas and balancing that out. This is a student I was working with, and started with throat articulating and trying to take that away and find somewhere more in the middle. Good. You are doing like perfect throat articulating right now. I don't know if you're meaning to.
Okay.
But it have to be. So there's no H's until you get to ha, ha, ha.
Okay. Okay.
And then 2, ready, and go. When I'm warming up a singer, I often end with a tongue twister. And that's because it gets the brain and the articulators in sync. Plus, it's just fun. So here's a student of mine that's ending his warm-up with a tongue twister.
Red, yellow, red, yellow, red. Red, leather, yellow, leather, red, leather, yellow, leather, red, yellow, red, yellow, red.
Sing more.
Red, leather, yellow, leather, red, yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red. Red, leather, yellow, leather, red, leather, yellow, leather, red, yellow, red, yellow, red.
Very good.
That's the best I've ever done that.
I know,
That was
good.
wild.